it's Hayden here, and it's the Man in the Mirror podcast. Welcome along. Man in the Mirror is a podcast where each week I talk to a male guest and we discuss their work, their life. We talk self-care, self-image, and what the guest really thinks about the man that looks back at him in the mirror. We have a little route around his bathroom cabinet and find out about some of his morning and evening routines and some of the products he likes to use. This week's guest has been a multiple nominee for the British Hairdresser of the Year. He started his career working for the legendary Charles Worthington, then went on to be the co-founder of Percy and Reed. Then he went on to form his own salon, and now he is the owner of Arkive Headcare and Arkive by Adam Reed. It is Adam Reed. Now, I only met Adam recently, and to be honest, he's someone that I've been really keen to get on the podcast. Lots of my friends and colleagues had said, look, you two would really get on. He'd be a great guest to have on the show. And for various reasons, it didn't happen. But actually, fortuitously, we were at the same fragrance event for Bodicea, I don't know, about a month ago maybe, and got chatting, and everyone was absolutely right. He was such wonderful company. And to be honest, we didn't really talk that much about work or fragrance even that much. We both have teenage sons, so we were talking about that. We are exactly the same age. So we found some common ground, and I really enjoyed his company. So I did ask him, look, I'd love you to come on the podcast, and we fixed it up. And very kindly, he said, look, it would be great to do it in person, and maybe you could come and see the salon and see what it's all about, and we could record it there on the day when the salon isn't open, which was a Monday. So there was some staff training in the salon. You'll hear some of the kind of background noise of the staff doing their thing and training and chatting. But Adam very kindly made some time for me, and we went downstairs and recorded the podcast. He was such a wonderful guest, and it was a really wide-ranging conversation. Adam, if you know anything about him, or if you follow him online, you'll know he's very open about his mental health and some of the struggles he's had at various points in his life. He was diagnosed relatively recently with ADHD. He talks very candidly about his mental health and mental well-being, but actually the more he talks about it, and his ethos for the salon of head care, literally care for your head, he manages to really sort of wrap it into his whole philosophy for hairdressing, and it made for a fascinating conversation. He also said, look, it'd be much easier to do this in person, and I'd appreciate it more, doing it face to face. I think I'd get more from it, which I was very happy to do, because, whatever works for the guests, I'm happy to do it virtually or in person. But obviously it's a lot easier when you can see the whites of someone's eyes and really kind of, converse properly and kind of vibe off each other, which I hope we did. It was quite a long one, but, Adam has so much breadth of knowledge and so much to impart, and I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. I will say that there are no ads, you may notice, in Man in the Mirror, but I do have a tipping service which is called coffee.com, and look, any donations go towards the running costs of the podcast, which are my editor and uploading to the streaming sites and using my editing software and things like that. So look, anything you could do would be hugely appreciated. And the link is ko-fi.com/man in the mirror. That's ko-fi.com/man in the mirror. So there we go. That's the end of the one and only ad. And let's get into this conversation with Adam Reed, who is the founder of Arkive Headcare and now Arkive Makes Scents, which is a range of hair and skin fragrances, which he's going to tell me much more about during our conversation. So sit back, relax, and here we go with Adam Reed talking to me, Hayden Williams, on Man in the Mirror. Let's go. Welcome along to Man in the Mirror. It's Hayden here, and as I said in the introduction, I am here at the Adam Reed Arkive hair care studio in Covent Garden in London with Adam Reed. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hi, I'm very good. Thank you very much. Very good.
Thank you so much for doing this. It's really kind.
Pleasure.
And to have the pleasure to do it in person, which is so much better.
It's nice, isn't it? I think as creatives, and as a creative person, I like face-to-face.
Yeah. And it's so great to actually get to see your salon, because I haven't been here before. And you showed me around, and you have the famous fragrance library, which we will definitely touch upon later. But it feels like such a sort of inclusive space and unique. It doesn't feel corporate in any way. So I'm looking around, there's gold glitter balls, there's handwritten signs. My mirror says, life is too short to have boring hair.
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking at mine at the moment.
But also I've got a hat on, so...
And yours says, when roots are deep, there is no reason to fear the wind. Fear
the wind.
I like it.
And obviously that's a little bit of a play on words when it comes to a salon. People having roots and not having roots. And strong roots create great foundations, as far as I'm concerned.
And the salon has been here for a year or so, Adam?
It's just over a year, yeah. So I opened Adam Reed London just before, 4 weeks before the first lockdown, over in Spitalfields. And obviously, we all know what happened then.
Yeah.
But for me, community is key to what I do. And it's been key throughout my whole career. I've been in London for 30 years now. And I started in Covent Garden. And we really realised that actually we needed to be more prominent on the high street.
Yeah. So that was Percy and Reed.
So there was Percy and Reed, then I had Adam Reed London, and then we opened Arkive for Adam Reed here last February.
Right. Amazing. And this, it's such a beautiful space. And obviously, bringing people to the salon, there's all kinds of services, and now there's the range of products. But I wonder if I could rewind a bit further. And you grew up in Somerset. So what was it that got you into hair and your first sort of Saturday job, I guess, would it have been? What got you into?
Well, do you know, I was a Saturday boy, and I was a children's face painter on Butlins.
Were you?
Yeah, so Butlins down in Minehead, I painted
of course,
Teenage Mutant Turtles and Spider-Man and all sorts.
As a teenager?
As a young, so we were allowed to work at 13 then, and I loved salons. I loved the community element of a salon, and I really struggled at school. So school wasn't a good time for me. I've recently, sort of in the last 2.5 years, been diagnosed ADHD and neurodivergent. And actually my whole thing at school was I knew I wasn't being educated properly. I didn't understand what properly was. Yeah. But for me, the way my mind worked, I struggled in school. And down in Somerset in the 80s, it was a much smaller community. But when I would go into a salon, first with my grandmother, and then as a treat to get my hair done, and then going into salons because I was realising how my identity could be projected through my haircuts and clothes. I was always interested in fashion. But hair for me was I knew as soon as I went in that I actually could learn. Yeah. So I thrived on the creativity of doing hair and
so was it the practical nature of it and the creative
and
side?
The fact you could see people changing and how they changed when you did the hair. The communication I loved learning from that community of clients. So I really enjoyed talking about the things that I was interested in. And again, for me, I wasn't really getting that at school. I didn't understand why, but it was numbers and I aren't good friends. I don't understand numbers. I can't see them properly.
You were saying you've got your account today and you're not looking forward to it.
No, do you know what's interesting as well is society, for me, tells us that we should be good at everything. And actually, I realised at school that the things that I was good at, I wasn't being taught about. Yeah. But when I went into the environment where I was learning, I thrived. And that was doing hair, that was communicating. I would communicate with people older than me. I would go into Boots. I was obsessed with product. I was already interested in fragrance. I loved skincare. I loved making stuff myself. My mum would often find talcum powder mixes in the bathroom. And I'd mix fragrance and talcum powder and face creams together, thinking I was creating something amazing. They weren't amazing.
So from an early stage, you had this interest in fragrance and product.
And the whole beauty industry. And again, what was interesting was I thrived on the learnings of that. So I was like, okay, what's interesting here is if something is given to me that I have a interest in, I can learn, whereas I had been told I couldn't learn and I was disruptive and all of those things. But it was within this industry that I started to realize I could learn. And actually, if I was focused on something, I could really thrive in it. I would save up my pocket money or my money that I'd earned in the salon and go and buy Elle and Vogue. And
did you?
And I'd be obsessed with them, and I'd be obsessed with that transformational element, innovation when it came to product. So not only would I look at hair care, but I was obsessed with makeup and fragrance, skincare, and all of the things like you would go into a department store or go into a chemist and see.
Yeah.
I was interested in. So things like, I remember some school friends and I wanted to look like George Michael. So popular culture was something that interested me.
Yeah.
We would go into Boots in Minehead, spray our hair with Sun-In, and then let it develop because we couldn't afford to buy it. And when I look back on all of it, we just sprayed it. And I've told Boots that I did that. But I also remember L'Oreal studio lines being interested by the Mondrian packaging. And I was like, so if my interest is piqued.
So, there was that studio line. I remember that.
And it was
studio line.
Yeah. And I still remember the adverts. And I remember that transformation thing that they would show models with lank, lifeless hair and they put a bit of studio line in and be able to create this persona. And I was like, this is really interesting. I also realised how, as a pro, we made people feel. And that, for me, was something that, as now I understand neurodivergence, I realised that without knowing, I knew the importance of feeling good.
Yeah.
And how you could make people feel good and how important conversation was and how important a confidant is and how important sharing experiences. And I think, hairdressers and salons and beauty spas, they're seen as I know the British Beauty Council coined this in lockdown, the beating heart of a high street. They really are, because actually we do what we do in this space. And people do come to us to look and feel good, but they also come to us for conversation and to chat and to talk.
And that stands to reason, doesn't it? And we know it from all our high streets, is that no matter what else closes and technology takes over, hairdressers remain, because you still
totally
you obviously need to do it in person, but beyond that you need that
and it's the
physical
touch element, the feel, the caring, the listening,
and the relationship you build up with your hairdresser.
Well, do you know what's interesting? And I realised this, especially through the pandemic, that loss of communication and community was the thing that I think hit more people hard than actually getting ill.
Oh, totally.
It was the fact that we couldn't talk about it and we couldn't converse and we were cut off. And actually, we realised how important that is. And again, we open this today with the fact that we're sitting here together. That is something that I still, when somebody says to me, can we do this in person? I'm always like, oh, yes. Because I walk away with so much more than I would if we were doing this remotely.
Do you think with your, talked about your neurodivergence, do you think it helps to do things, does it make a difference in terms of how you process whether we did this on screen or in person?
Totally. I can't process on. So I struggle with any kind of tech. I struggle with phone calls and the immediacy culture that's been created from messaging and emailing and texting.
That you've got to be available.
Yeah, and people think you're available. And actually, we then feel like if we don't get back immediately, that we will lose out on something. For me, setting that time aside and having that one-on-one, two-on-two, whatever it is, people discussing, I think, is so important. And for me as an individual, it's one of the most important things. So I was really ill in the first lockdown. I had a nervous breakdown. And it was caused by everything being tech. Me not being able to process because I didn't have a sounding board. As soon as you switched off, I was left with all of this information that I just couldn't process. So I dissociated totally. And it was
pulled back from everything.
No, I lost my mind.
Right.
So I ended up in hospital having totally dissociated. And what was interesting is my learnings from that was the fact that actually the stimulation that I need is way more in person. And the ability to question. I love nothing more than a good debate.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. I think it's really important for community because I'm like, I want to hear somebody's side of the story and why that is their side of the story. And as a hairdresser, I've been blessed with that my whole career.
Yeah.
And actually,
the amount of conversation.
Totally. And there are so many people that I don't agree with, or they don't agree with me, but because we have a mutual respect and amazing friendship, all of that just comes in with what we do. And it is so respectful. And it's such a wonderful feeling of learning and nurturing because my brain is being questioned. Online, you lose the personal touch of that.
Oh, we see it all the time, don't we? Where arguments just blow up straight away online, or people get cancelled it seems much more difficult now to find nuance or to be able to debate respectfully.
It's so true.
Because, you can just type away and say, you're an arsehole, I hate you, or I don't agree with your point of view. Whereas generally, I mean, not to overgeneralise, but in person, you understand somebody's intent. Yeah, and you can look into their eyes. And
totally, and you know that they're not being personal.
Or if they're not receiving what you're giving, you can
absolutely.
You can kind of nuance it.
And we're human beings. I think I definitely need that. And actually, when too much is taken away from that, I struggle. And again, one of the things of being a hairdresser is, and we hear it all of the time, our hands are our biggest tool. Yeah. And actually, you can't do what you do as a hairdresser without the hands in the head. Yes. And what's really interesting for me there is, that's your anchor, but everything else, it's the community spirit, it's the conversation. I always say, I'm a sponge. I love taking in information, but if I'm doing it one-sided, so I'm just reading something online, I struggle because I do take it as gospel. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh my God, everything that I thought is wrong. It's not. It's because I'm not having a bant backwards and forwards. Yeah. And again, I think as a hairdresser, that is one of the things that makes us all quite unique. Yeah. But actually what we want is to be able to converse and share. Yeah. And you understand somebody's intent when you're with them. Yeah.
And it's so interesting what you were saying about, I suppose, getting to an age or getting to a stage where you understand your strengths and weaknesses and realizing that you don't have to be a person that can do absolutely everything and have all these amazing soft skills, but then also organize everything. And you've quite smartly sort of said, well, no, that's not my strength. I will get Kenny or someone else to do the kind of organising, which is, I suppose, is a way of, it must be quite liberating.
It is quite liberating, and it's something that it's a very much a work in progress. I thought I could do everything. I thought I should be doing everything. Yeah,
and we can't, though, can we?
No, we can't. We can't. And again, I often talk about head care. That was something we coined back in lockdown, because for me, I was like, if I'm not looking after my head, nothing else comes into place, and that's self-care. My head has to be in a good place for any amount of self-care to work, because otherwise it all gets churned up and mixed together and lost in this muddy mess. For me to have clarity, it's about having the ability to do my job really well whilst I have an amazing support network, who then can take the burden of things that I don't do. And actually, I've come to a point where I'm like, well, as a creative, my mind is never going to work academically. So I seek people who can help me in those areas. And that's been amazing, even with producing a range of products and a brand. And, but I'm still learning. I'm still massively learning.
Yeah. Oh, I think it makes so much sense. And I think, we're here in the salon, and I'd just be really interested in, what your ethos is for the salon and how you see hairdressing. What do you want the customer experience to be when you come in here?
For me, my whole thing is people feeling good about themselves. That's a integral part of my job. Whether that is they're seen, heard, they feel like they're present. And I would say the space is about people feeling and being present. So encouraging people to switch off tech where they can. We all need that. We all hear it. We don't do it. I don't do it, even though I try to encourage it. It is about universality. So I, as an LGBT man, who I often talk about the strong women in my life who've guided me and who seem to be there when I need them there. I'm somebody who is like, actually from a neurodivergent perspective, I think about how brains work. And actually for me, that's key.
Right.
And what I want is for people to feel comfortable in their environment, in their own skin, whatever it is, whatever or whoever you choose to be.
Yeah.
I struggle with how things are moving forward from the perspective of my brain just doesn't log half of it. But also what I like is to learn and understand. And I think the only way we can do that is transparency.
Yeah.
And in a way, what I've tried to do with the salon is create a space. I always say it's a bit like my brain, but so many people feel quite comfortable in my brain.
Yeah.
And if I'm talking and conversing, you know, there are hotels that, I've been lucky enough to travel, but there are some hotels that I walk into and I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah. Oh, I know what you mean.
There are some stores I walk in and don't feel comfortable. And then there are some places that I walk in and I literally feel like I've been there a million times before and I can be Adam and who I want to be.
Well, I suppose that this space might not be for everyone.
Absolutely.
And that's okay too, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it is about having a choice. We should all feel like we have a choice to do what we feel comfortable doing and be where we feel comfortable being. And that's what I sort of wanted to do here.
Yeah.
And again, we're always refining it. Sometimes I walk in and go, is it a bit too much? And there are days that it can be a bit too much.
Yeah.
And then
Great,
we'll refine
just
it.
to explain to the listeners, there's, as well as obviously the usual things you would expect in a salon, there's lots of kind of ephemera, memorabilia down the stairs. There's beautiful sofas. There's gold glitter balls. There's Adam's perfume library. It does feel very personal in a really good way. Beautiful wallpaper. Feels very enveloping, very welcoming.
Yeah, there's lots of storytelling as well. And again, I think that my whole life has been around me being able to tell stories. So that gives me the ability to feel comfortable and at home. And encouraging people to share their story or tell their story or to listen to other stories. A lot of what is in here will have a story attached to it. And for me, that makes me feel very comfortable and at home. Yeah. And when I go somewhere, or when somebody walks in here, the amount of people that walk in and go, oh, God, I haven't seen that sort of thing for ages. I'm like, well, we are doing the right thing because we're encouraging these conversations, which instantly encourages you to put your phone down and be present.
Yes. Yeah.
And I truly believe that. And again, it's very much how my brain works. I don't feel comfortable going into somewhere that is sterile and clinical, but that's just me. But also, you know, I like storytelling. So if I go into a space and I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing, and somebody tells me a story, I feel at home.
Yeah.
And again,
see that here.
That feeling of the place I've always felt at home is when I'm doing the job that I chose to do a long time ago, working with people and making people feel good, however that manifests itself. I'm like, well, that's my people. Yeah. And you attract what you put out. And my hope always is that people feel comfortable and present.
And I presume, you know, even in the year or so that you've been here, I imagine people keep coming back, and you've got regular clients who probably followed you around for
Well, I've
years
had
anyway.
some that have been with me. As I said, I moved in February. It'll be 30 years. I have some clients that back in my Charles Worthington days, they visited me then and they still come to see me now. Gosh. That I think is testament to them and to the relationship that I have with them.
Such a deep relationship, though, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
And they've seen you in every... Well, both of you've seen each other in so many different stages.
Yeah. And that's also, from a community perspective, really important for me. And it is one of my big drivers.
Yeah. I mentioned in the introduction, you've worked in editorial, you've also worked with celebrities along the way, but you said something very interesting to me earlier that, you don't like to be labelled as a, quote unquote celebrity hairdresser, even though you've worked with, all kinds of supermodels and One Direction, and you've been around in the scene in the sort of 90s and noughties in London. But your view of the customer is that everyone should be treated equally,
Absolutely.
Right?
And, hairdresser for me, so when I was a young... I also do have to apologise to the listeners. We are in the salon working, so there may be a tiny bit of background noise.
We're here on a Monday, and it's training
Education Day.
Education Day. It's training day.
So there is a little bit of background noise. So I do apologise.
Atmosphere.
No, for me, when I was at school, again, as I said, education was difficult for me, and being a hairdresser back then. I loved it, from going to a salon with my grandmother as a little boy to going in as a treat to becoming a Saturday boy, a holiday boy. I loved the fact that I felt like I belonged. And it was really one of the first times that I felt like I belonged. I realised the strength of community.
And you've worked your way up, from that stage. You've got to the top, say Charles Worthington, then your own Percy and Reed, and then your own salon, and working with the great and the good. Yeah,
and I'm a brand ambassador for L'Oréal Professionnel. I have been for a long time. I get to live a dream that actually... When I was young, what was interesting is hairdressing was always the job you did if you couldn't do anything else. If you didn't get exams, you didn't need exams for it. On career days, it was always like, do you know what? You can be a hairdresser. I always found that offensive.
Yeah.
Because I was like, but that's what I want to be. And interestingly, from 13, I remember going into school and wanting to wear my own outfits because I had been told I would have a job when I left school. So I was like, school is training me to be a bank manager or an office worker, and nothing wrong with any of those things.
Yeah.
It wasn't in my trajectory. Being a hairdresser was, and it's something that I've always been really proud as a human being, that I, at 51, still love my job the same as I did when I started.
That's amazing.
And my job was to be a hairdresser.
Yeah.
So why try to add or detract from me? If it makes you feel really positive, you can call yourself whatever you want. But I am so happy that hairdressing has given me this career that I'm like, there's an element of, I've proved to myself that hairdressing was the right decision. And that's why for me it doesn't need anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah, the word doesn't need to be adorned with anything else. But And
it's an incredible job and an incredible career. And it's afforded me the ability to meet hundreds of people.
The people you've seen, the things you've experienced,
the places I've been to. Like even doing, so I did Madonna's hair, as a young boy, she was my absolute icon. One of my first shows.
What stage Madonna?
I did the Me Against the Music video.
Oh, yeah.
So I was assisting Luigi Moreno at the time, and he was coming back to Paris. He was coming back to Europe to do a job, asked me to stand in for him, and it was doing Madonna's hair. Did you know before you went? No, it was amazing. I went to the rehearsal with a whole load of Kerastase products for her, and I was told then, which was probably better.
Yeah.
Because my slightly excited teenage mind would not have coped very well, but actually being in the midst of it, I was like, I can't do anything.
So how old were you then, Adam?
30 then.
Right.
So I had moved to New York to set up Charles Worthington, was assisting Luigi Moreno at the time, and I moved there on my 30th birthday. The first ever fashion show that I did was Red or Dead, and I used to come to London, go to Neal Street and buy Red or Dead clothes.
Yeah.
I got to do that show, and I met Anita Roddick, who was a huge inspiration for me prior to that. And then she became a very good friend and confidant to me. And I was like, as a boy, along with Saturday work, I, at Christmas, would pack gift baskets in the body shop, and I was obsessed with what she did with the body shop. But again, she became one of my real confidant
thing, wasn't it?
It was huge
in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, and what she brought to the beauty industry was incredible. We'd never seen it before. It was pioneering. She was an absolute activist, and she taught people how to be a respectful activist.
And talking about ingredients in a different way, and things that were in the product.
Yeah, and then she became a really good friend of mine. Amazing. I got to meet all of these amazing people who Isabella Blow was somebody I met early on in my career, and she went on to put me in front of amazing people, which is what she was so good at. If you strip everything else back, she was an amazing networker because her passion drove her to introduce like-minded people. Again, that's that whole, all of these incredibly strong women have molded me throughout my career. But
did you think when you're dealing with the likes of Isabella Blow or Madonna, can you treat them in the you know, do you go about your process in exactly the same way?
Yeah, and I think neurodiversity, now I look back on it, I always felt privileged. Yeah. Very interestingly, and I was talking to somebody about this morning, I had to go and get a diagnosis because I was really struggling, and I was starting to read more and more about neurodiversity. I knew within this industry there were definite creative brains and business brains. And I wanted to make sure that I was putting myself in front of the right people to allow me to build what I knew and thrived on in a commercially viable sense. And when I met those people, what I realized was we're all human beings. That was a real eye-opener. If I'm privileged enough to be in their presence, but they also want to be in mine, then I'm going to really make the most of it. But also, I think there was an element of a lack of ego or an understanding of ego, because I always think it's an important thing to have, but it's how you manage it. But again, I think from my neurodiversity, having these nurturing women was something that I thought, if I'm only in this position for 10 minutes, I'm going to get as much from it as I can. And it allowed me to maintain an element of being present. So I didn't allow myself to go off into my little fantasy world of, oh my God, I'm meeting this person. I was instinctual enough to know that actually get as much from this experience as possible.
Soak it in.
Yeah, and it's when I've met other founders, you know, beauty editors back in the day who were so knowledgeable and they wanted to share this knowledge and the importance of networking with like-minded people, but also people who understood how my mind worked and I understood how their mind worked and how you could create a mutually beneficial relationship.
Well, I talked in the introduction about, you know, I've been keen to talk to you for a while, and the fact that you've got, you know, you're talking about hair and grooming and fragrance, all these things combining to be the kind of perfect guest. But and we've talked a little bit and mentioned your fragrance library here, but when did your relationship with fragrance, did it start at the same time as your interest in hair? Was fragrance something that was always...
probably way before that.
Was it?
So the smell of anything piqued my interest all of the time.
So it doesn't have to be nice fragrances.
No, and it doesn't have to be a product that smells. It could be the obvious, when it rains, that petrichor smell. Freshly mowed grass. I was talking the other day, and again, when I talk in these situations, I don't like to repeat, but my aunt had a farm, and I was always so...
Is this in Somerset?
Yeah, down on Exmoor. And I remember smelling the silage and being really interested by the bitterness of rotting grass, fermenting grass, but also by the molasses that she used to build the cows. Then the smell of a cow, the smell of an animal.
There's something about farm, you know, being living in a town, but farm smells, it's incredible
because it's so powerful. A lot of the scents are way more sensorial than you would normally
might even
smell.
Be chemicals or anything.
Chemicals, or even, I was talking about this recently, a slurry pit. There is something about that smell that actually, if you didn't know what it was, and I always try to not look at what I'm smelling, if they pique your interest, then they pique your interest. The smell of sea on a storm, that salty, slightly seaweedy, it's not fish, but it is not water or mineral. It's quite a mix of smells. I think that's one of the best.
Decaying as well.
But the smell of decay is a really interesting one. Because
hence, actually, you know, you look at animals when they're sort of smelling dead. My dog used to roll in
fox
dead stuff or fox mess. But my complete aside, but we have someone who walks our dog, and she phoned today and said, Poppy just rolled in a dead fox.
Well, you know the best thing?
What?
Tomato ketchup.
Is it?
Yeah, neutralises it totally. So wash any of that slightly animalistic smelling stuff. Ketchup gets rid of it.
There you go. But animals being interested in, well, more than, wanting to roll masking, in dead stuff. Yeah, masking. But we also have this innate interest in things that smell bad.
Totally. And I spoke about this recently. And again, if anybody's been listening to stuff, hopefully there'll be enough difference. But reading Perfume.
Yes.
Patrick Sarsgaard, I think is his surname.
Yeah.
When he explains and describes scent, it was mind-blowing to me because I was like, well, actually, this is just about the scent. Let's remove the
idea,
the realness of it, whatever it is, and let's just smell it. So sometimes for me, like tuberose, when I smell tuberose as it's dying, I think it's one of the most beautiful smells. I do like it when it's living and thriving, but there's something about that decay, that decomposition, that it just gives out this perfume that is so strong. I once was in India, this was 1999, and I went into a beautiful little potions shop in a market in Mumbai. It was Bombay then. And I remember them giving me musk, pure musk, and I didn't have a clue what it was. I didn't have any idea.
Rub it on?
But there was a tiny little bottle of it, and they wanted me to buy it, and it was really expensive. So they put it on my skin, and I remember going, oh, it's dyed my skin. But smelling it and thinking, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. And when I got to the airport, it was confiscated, and I was told what musk was. And it, honestly, I was like, I've been rubbing that on my... So what I would do with anything that I love, fragrance-wise, so it can be a face cream, like a Trixo hand cream does it for me. The Max Factor Powder Puff cream, that does it for me. I would put it under my nose so that I've got it there. And I remember rubbing this musk under my nose, and they told me it was the anal gland of a musk deer. And I was like, what? And I got told off at the airport. They realised that actually I had no idea what it really was. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. But again, what they do is pique my interest. I don't know if you remember the Cire Trudin Eau de la Lune, which was the smell of the moon, which is sulphur, pure sulphur. But there is something so beautiful about that smell. And I'm like, if we don't see it, what would we think of that smell? And that for me was huge. So perm solution.
Really sort of
chemical acrid smell, slightly ammonia. I still can like them if I don't know what they are. And I think that's so interesting.
And you've obviously got an interest that's more kind of academic in smelling everything. Totally. And sensorial rather than...
And again, do you know what, for me, what I realised as a young man and throughout my career, that as I started to have access to books about fragrance, about skincare, about body care, about products that we used to look after yourself, we'll go back to the Body Shop. They used to do those amazing Japanese washing grains back in the day, where Anita had gone over, found this incredible sort of chalk kaolin product. But I loved that flat, zinky smell of that. You shouldn't really love that. But on my skin, and to me, to this day, it reminds me of that smell. And there's something so nurturing and wonderful about that. It used to go into that, from a grain into this creamy, liquidy substance that you then put on your face and it dried down. But the smell of it, every part of that to me was sensorial. And I then learnt about that. And what I realised was, from an educational perspective, because my brain did work differently, if I was given something that would stimulate me, it would give me this amazing ability to learn about it. And then I would want to find the information. We were more restricted back then because we didn't have the internet.
Isn't it funny that, when you find a subject that you're passionate about, you throw yourself in and you would just want to learn more. And
then that's one of the reasons, later, I suppose, people want to talk to me now, because that is where my interest peaked.
And then you've got 40 years
of all of that
encyclopaedic sort of smell knowledge, but also formulations, ingredients, an understanding of what works and what doesn't work, an understanding of I was always piqued by marketing and PR and how you communicate things. Learning about that for me was amazing, but you couldn't do that at school. But again, for me, it was all around this incredible beauty industry. Well, I guess, it's a perfect segue to talk about your own products with the Arkive Head Care and Arkive Makes Sense. So you've got 4 fragrances now, Adam. How amazing. Everyone can tell your passion and your knowledge for fragrance, and you've actually got your own products on the shelves that are Adam Reed, Arkive Makes Sense. So can you tell me, they're very new and they work in the hair and on the skin?
So head care for me was my learnings in how we looked after ourselves, and it started in the pandemic. I realized the head to hand to head element, when that was lost, how important connection is. So we had also adopted our son 8 years ago now, and there were things within our beauty regimes that we used to bond and connect. So bathing, touch, feel, how products felt, scent, fragrance. Then when I wasn't very well in the first lockdown, he reciprocated a lot of those things to me. And I was like, well, this is head care, but also this is what we do in a salon every day.
Yeah.
And I spoke earlier about, for me, self-care is so important, but actually, as a neurodivergent ADHD, I suffer from quite extreme anxiety, paranoia, manic depression. There is a lot goes on. Actually, for me, it was head care is about getting what is in my head right, because no amount of self-care worked for me unless my head was in a good place.
Yeah.
But what I realized, it's small things making a big difference. I then was like, that's what I want in a range. So Arkive head care was always just going to be fragrance. I was I just want to do fragrance. I was looking into how fragrance affected the way you felt. So I as soon as you walked in today, I picked up the Robert Piguet Bandit, because for me, that just brings happiness. I discovered that when I lived in New York.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that happy time. And I was like, well, actually, if I can create a range of products that are for every head, they're genderful, so it's a celebration of who you are.
I like that term, and you mentioned that to me earlier, genderful. So it's
a celebration.
Exactly. It feels like a very positive word.
Absolutely. And again,
I dance around it and I get worried about, is it gender-free or, I don't know.
Well, actually, my thing is
nice.
As an LGBT man for a long time, I was the G of LGBT. Then as communities grew, there were more and more educational pieces. And I was like, well, salons are a great place to talk about this. They're a great place for us to start communicating it. Yeah. And actually, it is a celebration. Again, I'm always learning. I don't get it right all of the time.
Yeah.
What I want is for people to look at me and go, well, actually, he is learning.
Yeah.
And he isn't going to get it right. And if I can educate him a little bit, we are sharing and we are more
Let's have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation and let's learn. And don't, I don't want
jumping
to
a fence and everything. Yeah.
Totally. Because actually, even as a gay man who for years hid my sexuality, I'm like, let's celebrate this.
Did you? So
Yeah, for a long time. I was bullied so bad at school. And
so when did you feel able to be your real
when
self?
I moved to London.
Right.
And even then I struggled, 21.
Yeah.
Even then I struggled.
See, I'm, stupidly imagine, London in the 90s or whatever would have been quite a sort of an accepting place, but not so much.
It was more accepting than Somerset.
Yeah.
But you still went through it. And also what I had at that point was all of the baggage that came with the bullying. And again, as I've learned about neurodiversity...
So did you sort of pretend, I don't know how to say this right, but did you have to pretend to be heterosexual? Were you sort of completely pretending or just keeping quiet?
Well, I just kept quiet. Yeah. Unless it was talked about. I struggled with talking about it.
Did some of your friends know?
Some did.
Yeah.
And I had a partner, I moved up to be with somebody, but now I look back and now I understand my ADHD and triggers and the effect of trauma. So the bullying was bad. And there was a lot of shame that was put on it. Also fear, because
physical,
it was the physical, mental. Yeah. Then there was the fear of HIV and AIDS. Yeah. That kicked in there.
Well, we're the same age. And we'll both vividly remember all those...
Don't die of ignorance.
Yeah, all the campaigns that were sort of supposed to be frightening, but it presumably would have marginalised people.
Well, it did. It marginalised people, but it also... because there wasn't enough information with it. For years, somebody at school... It's a long story, not really the right platform. But somebody once said to somebody, don't hang around with him, he's an AIDS victim. And I remember thinking I had AIDS, but I didn't know how you caught it. There was no information for me, especially down in Somerset, to find it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go into a library because the librarian knew your parents or somebody, or may have been one of your friends at school's mums, whatever it is. So actually, we hid it continuously.
Yeah.
So what comes with that is later in life trauma. And being bullied, you put on a brave face, but it's all there. And it's interesting because I talked earlier about identity. We didn't have the ability to even identify as who we were. We hid it. Then we had to come and this is a generalization, it's different and it's personal for everybody, but I then had to come to terms with being comfortable, not living in fear of talking about it, and trying to get on with my life whilst I was neurodiverse. Now I look back on it, I understand, I was talking, as I said, somebody earlier, and they said they're learning about ADHD. They see it as a superpower. I'm like, that's not this for me. It's not the superpower. The superpower is understanding it. My journey started when I was diagnosed, but what it made me realize was when I was passionate about something, I gave it my all, and I love that.
Yeah.
And I love sharing, and, I am far from perfect, but understanding my neurodiverse mind, I realized why I made decisions that I made. I have a much better understanding now. And my thing is celebrating people for being who they are, truly. And that's why Arkive, for me, it's genderful, it's universal, it's affordable, it's designed for every
really
head.
is affordable, isn't it? They're very well priced.
They're amazingly formulated. So Arkive is Adam, Riley and Kenny. So that's my husband and my son.
Yes. Yeah.
That was the Ark. Then Arkive is my history and what goes on in my brain.
Such a great name, mate.
Bought into product. And again, my thing is, I couldn't talk about a genderful, universal product range and then outprice it. And my whole
life. So you want it to be accessible
in every sense. So we're in Selfridges, we are in John Lewis, we are in Marks and Spencer's, we are in Boots. So again, accessibility for me was key. I call it high-end, high street. I am high street through and through. And if I can invest in a really nice piece of clothing or going on holiday or an amazing fragrance, and I will. But actually, I'll often go in just by my basics. And, there are products and ingredients that I absolutely love and have bought for years, and then I love looking at new things and investing and finding out. And again, that's that curiosity element, which I think Arkive as a brand is all about.
I love the idea of it being a sort of treasure trove and your history wrapped into...
Absolutely. I call it creatively curious, curiously creative. That's my brain. That's how I would describe my neurodiversion. And again, if I'm massively interested in something, I'm curious.
You're all in.
If I'm then sparked by it, I'm massively creative and I'll think different. But that's how I describe my neurodivergence.
Well, look, we're going to talk, Adam, a little bit more about Arkive later on. But as always on the podcast, I like to take a little sneaky peek in your bathroom cabinet, which I can't quite do. I mean, I can see your perfume cabinet here in the store. But I'm just really keen to find out about some of the products you use in your morning and evening routine. And I've no doubt, your long history and, of course, all the amazing hair care products that you create anyway. But have you got a sort of regular routine of things? I
really have.
Have you?
And then things come in and out. So for me, a good toothpaste is key.
What do you like?
So Marvis, I love. And I love Colgate. So I have my high street and then I have my high end.
Which Marvis one?
The licorice one.
Do you?
Yeah, I love licorice. And they do a licorice one and...
There's a tea one as well.
There's a tea, a oolong, or grey.
Grey.
There's a lemony one. There's loads, but the licoricey one is the one that I love. And again, for me, that's a big part of head care. I often say sometimes all I need to do is get up, brush my teeth, wash my hair, and that gives me the armour to go out.
There's that same theory of, I think, getting those routines in, but there's the same one about sort of making your bed and that sense of order, isn't there?
Yeah, and they're calling it now resetting.
Oh, right.
So that you do a Sunday reset. And, I'm really about...
Makes sense, doesn't it?
It does make sense. And again, if you're neurodivergent, sometimes that's really difficult because your mind can't focus, but it allows that focus. So toothpaste is key, a good deodorant. And again, I go between Fengel. Do you remember Fengel, that bath oil?
No.
Fenjal or J... It's an old school
like
bath
an 80s
oil
thing, or
before that, I think. They have a roll-on deodorant that I love, and then I love Vaseline Intensive Care.
Do you? Yeah.
Skin Fresh or something.
Yeah.
They are two key products that I love. I then have. I'm an Advanced Night Repair Estee Lauder fiend.
Great.
I go in and out, but I love it.
Yeah.
And again, I need most of the time multifunctionality.
Mm-hmm.
I love a hand soap.
Saves time though, right?
It really does for me.
Yeah.
I love a hand soap, so I love Imperial Leather.
Oh, yeah.
I love Pears. I think that's more of an evocative feel.
Yeah.
Then there are amazing cleansers. So the Skin Rocks, Harens, the gel cleanser, I think is...
I to be honest, I haven't used them. I mean, I know her and I know... Yeah, they're good.
Yeah, I love all of Skin Rocks products, actually. I love a good old Kiehl's. The herbal blue astringent.
Yeah, really good.
The facial fuel
face wash I use.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Isn't it? And then I feel like you've had something's happened. Clean. Yeah.
Again, I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah.
Badidas bubble bath.
Yeah.
I love the Neal's Yard bubble bath, and I love a bubble bath. So I'm a.
Are you a bath guy?
And I think that's head to
every day.
Me. Every day.
Do you?
A warm bath.
Evening or morning?
Depends on what day. But I love to spray the surface of a bath with perfume and sit into it. I am a real bath salt. So the Dr. I can see the lavender bath salts. I'm an Epsom salt man.
Right.
A magnesium salt. But I go to TK Maxx to buy my bath salts. They always have loads.
Yeah.
And
TK Maxx is great for some stuff.
It's great for a lot of beauty, yeah. It's great. And again, my whole thing there is, if you understand TK Maxx, it's often product that is coming to the end of date.
Yeah.
And it's a great way of...
Or sometimes in their refreshing packaging or something like that.
Absolutely. So the products are all really good. And it's a great way of... moving product on.
You've got to know what you're looking for, haven't you?
Totally, yeah.
Like anything.
Totally. And like I said, I sort of go in and get my bath salts. I get bits and bobs. I am a diptyque fiend. I love diptyque.
Well, I see here up on the perfume wall, there's lots of beautiful diptyque used candle jars with various accessories and hairpins and all sorts.
Yeah. So diptyque for me, when I first moved to London, I would go down to... Space NK and Covent Garden, and I would buy tuberose candles and L'Ombre d'Anzler. And for me, it was the smell of my time that I moved to London. It was a real treat. So I would save my tips up, go and buy a tuberose candle, and I felt luxurious.
It was a little touch of luxury, isn't it?
Yeah, because the smell is amazing.
Have you been to the new, what they've done up the Maison Diptyque on New Bond Street? Isn't it amazing?
Do you know what I love about Diptyque is the fact that they've maintained their heritage?
Yeah.
I think that's incredible.
It is like a museum almost.
It is.
Isn't it? The history of the brand. I mean,
again, for head care, it's an amazing concept. And I do think it's very similar to what I've tried to do here. You're not just going, it's an experience.
Yeah.
And I think the more we can experience experiences, the more present we are.
Yeah. I think it's they've got this thing at the moment for Christmas. I don't know if you've been in there last week or so. On the first floor, there's this called the ephemeral zone or something. I can't remember the artist's name. Maybe I'll put it in the program notes. But she's made all these different felt versions of...
I've seen it.
Yeah, of all the products. And then like felt food and panettone and mince pies. And a trolley.
Incredible, isn't it?
And there's even a cash register made of felt.
I've seen pictures.
Oh, yeah. It's so cool.
It's so cool.
Worth a look.
And again, Diptyque for me is it's a real treat product for me.
Yeah, totally. Do you like the fragrances too?
I love the fragrances. Tamdao is probably my favourite. So when Kenny and I met...
Your wedding fragrance.
It was, and it was when Riley came to us. It was one fragrance that we used for him to really feel a part of us. It was an amazing connector.
Yeah.
I love Mason Pearson hairbrushes and Le Bon Brosse hairbrushes because I believe the power of brushing hair. And again, if you want to fragrance your hair, spray your hairbrush and brush it through.
So that tactility thing is important.
Yeah, and not just for me on my own, but to do it for other people. Brushing somebody's hair is an amazing form of head care. It's an amazing way of distributing product through the hair. It's an amazing thing to detangle hair. But so taking in your head care and then the practical element is something that I love.
And we know that instinctively, I think, don't we? Because I think when people aren't well and, where you see
totally
brushing someone's hair when they can't talk or something like that.
It's a beautiful thing
where
to
did
do.
we get that from? And it makes sense.
When Riley came to us, we were encouraged by our social worker to use lotions and powders to bond, so rubbing certain areas of his skin. There was an amazing bonding element to this, but there is proven positivity that comes from proven positive elements that come from that touch and feel. And I think head care, it's a big thing.
Yeah.
Again, product wise, going back to this amazing product, Charlotte Tilbury Magic Cream, I think is amazing.
Yeah. My wife swears by that.
It's amazing. And the Goddess Skin Cleanser is amazing. But also, if I go back, there are cleansers that I've used for years. The Body Shop Tea Tree, I think, is amazing. So,
and what about grooming, Adam? You've got a good beard there.
I'm a bugger. So I do go to a barber.
Do you?
Yes. I use the Arkive Co-Cleanse to cleanse and to nourish my beard. I use the Kiehl's beard oil because it smells of the original Kiehl's musk fragrance, and I just love that smell on my skin. I also use the beard oil on my knuckles and my elbows just to nourish.
Do you?
Yeah, I love it. That's
a good idea.
And also, I love the de Mamiel Altitude Oil. So Altitude Oil was Annie de Mamiel created this amazing oil, and I love all of her skincare. So it's hugely holistic, but amazing performance. She does an amazing cleansing dew, which is this amazing cleansing oil, which is lovely. But her Altitude Oil was designed, it's more of the fragrance for when you're flying to clear your head and to put you really great into a great position when you're flying. But then I rub that onto my skin. It's amazing. And I also rub it on my temples if I'm flying. But I also love This Works Sleep Plus spray and the This Works products. I am a huge fan of the ACT deodorant. Have you seen ACT?
Yes. They've been on the podcast.
Oh, have they?
Yeah.
Well, I think what those two have done is amazing.
Those products, those are great.
They're amazing.
Great. And sort of touching your underarm.
Touch.
Yeah, I like that.
But also the smell of them. I think it's Columbia Road that drives me quite mad. I love it.
I've got the orange one.
Oh, the bitter oranges.
Yeah.
Isn't it just amazing?
They're great.
They're really good.
I'm so pleased to see how well they're winning awards left, right and centre, but also sort of broadening out the range, aren't they, now?
Yes, they are, aren't they? They've got shower gels, I think, the other day, or shower products and
there's
skin
lotions
products.
And things,
And again, my whole thing is that's very much about head care. As skin people, as hair people, there have been people that do skin care and hair care and fragrance, and I'm like, well, actually, my knowledge is insane about it all. And when I look at the product,
you seem to have a vast amount of knowledge on lots of different brands.
It's where I really get obsessed. Then I use Santa Maria Novello jojoba oil, and I'm a huge fan of Santa Maria Novello. Both
I went there for the first time to the store
place in the world
in Florence this summer when I went to.
Well, they also have an amazing serum, which I forgot the name of, and I did mean to pack it to bring it today, but it's a face serum that is amazing. I don't know if you have seen Joanna Elner's brand, and she has done a skin brew.
Oh, no.
And it is called Reome, Reome, and this skin brew is a...
is it something you leave on then?
I do, and honestly, I love it. But you're here... I would say I'm loyal to some things. I get sent a lot of things, and I love trying it.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of covering the things that I would use on a regular. I am a big fan of The Ordinary as well.
Yeah.
So I discovered The Ordinary back in the day, really early on, and I thought what Brendan did was amazing. But I also loved the simplicity and the understanding that actually, if you get the right products and they're easy to use,
and it just tells you what's
using it.
in it. It's just that's
absolutely.
in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's great. And in terms of have you got a certain sort of shaving foam or cream?
So I use the Meridian shavers.
Right. Yeah, I know.
I go to a barber, so I go to Two Chairs, which is down on Endell Street, and they'll do all of the sharpening, doing all of my edges.
So you'll do that once a month?
I do that once a month, and I should really do it every 2 weeks, but I just don't have the time.
Yeah.
So then I use my Meridian just to even everything up, keep things tidy. But do you know what? I am the worst person in a salon chair as well. So one of the reasons that I go to the barbers is because I'm there on my own. They give me a treat, and they love the fact that I go in there. They do skin fading, so they use blades and whatnot. That's a brush drawing. But again, then it comes down to I am really lucky that in my bathroom I have so much stuff, and there is very few products that I don't like.
Yeah.
Like, I love a good number 7 product. I love going to the airport and finding a old Clarins moisturizer. They used to do a multi-moisturizer, and as much of the performance of that product, I love the smell, and it takes me back to then the Clarins hand cream I love. I love, if I want to put anything on my skin, I use the YSL New. So if I'm doing TV or something, I'm not somebody, I've got grey hair, so I've never found a fake tan that doesn't dye my grey hair. And it dyes it orange. So I really struggle with anything like that. Yeah. And I'm also quite pink and really pale. So if I'm on and I want to use a concealer, I use the YSL, it's NU. I use a bit of their concealer. I use NARS. I love NARS. Because actually it's quite foolproof for me. Even as I groom people's skin, can I do my own?
Yeah.
No. Not at all. And I need to dab it on my fingers. I love what Trini has done. And there are bits of Trini's products, her amazing cream that she's got. Sometimes all I need to do is put that on my skin, but I'll also use the old school Clarins Beauty Flash Balm.
I love how you obviously mix kind of, as you say, high street stuff with things that are a bit more pricey.
Absolutely. And there are things that I categorically will buy. So I'm a huge Hakel's fan, and I've supported Hakel since their inception.
Such a lovely brand. And there's some lovely fragrances too.
Their blackberry fragrance is one of the best, and then they do a fennel and chalk and sea
I like
salt.
that connection with Kent and specific kind of place.
I discovered when Dom first set it up, he had a pop-up in the Ace in East London, and I discovered him there and then down in Margate. And I just love what they have done and has it grown. It's incredible. That stuff with seaweed and everything. It's incredible. And their products are amazing.
It's like sort of mad scientist stuff, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It really is. And then we were talking about Tom Daxon earlier and what he did. His fragrances were beautiful. He created, loved. And I was like, actually, they're really well considered. They're really great product.
Yeah.
I'm really about performance.
Yes.
And products really working, efficacy. Yeah. And as I said, I get to try so many. And if I try something, I give it a good go. So I'll use it the whole way through. So I'll never just dab things on and off. But my staples definitely sit with some key staples across the board. And I'm a nail net hairspray fan. I don't use it on myself, but it's one product that I will buy continuously. Supreme Hold Nail Net Hairspray, I'll go into Boost and stock up continuously because nothing performs like that. And then, of course, my Arkive products. Yeah. I would love to create, I've always said head care it's about feeling good, but there are the opportunity is limitless. And again,
so you're always thinking of new
opportunity. And what's been amazing are brands that are interested in collaborating and working alongside what we're doing with head care. I love the fact that it's piqued people's interest.
Yeah.
And actually, like I said, it's so funny how things are so, we chatted about this earlier, pushed to how you look for your age. I'm like, how I look from my experience. Yeah. And it's such an interesting thing for me. I do like to look after myself. But one of the things that I'm probably really happy about is the way that I look. I love my grey hair. I love the fact that I have laughter lines, and there's so much about.
I love that you're not trying to. I can't really be. I can't be bothered, but I'm ready to embrace the age.
Me too.
We're both 51. I'm not interested in covering it up and pretending.
No, do you know what? Every now and again, I go into a stage of. I saw that somebody. Well known, and I'm not going to say their name because it'd be unprofessional, but had the threads put into their jaw, and it's something I've always thought about. But then I was like, would I feel happy? I don't have the best relationship with mirrors.
Right.
Which I know
we'll get into that.
I know.
We'll get into that.
But I'm like, if I catch sight of myself in the mirror, am I happy? And yes, I am. My eyes do tend to sparkle. I'm pleased with my skin.
Great eyes. You've got
well, I don't drink, and I do think it makes a difference.
Yeah.
I do think it makes a difference. It made a massive difference for me. But
really sparkly eyes.
I look after my eyes. So my eyes, I have so I need to lubricate my eyes all of the time. They get really sore and dry.
Right.
But I use a basic Boots eye spray, and then I've got eye
like
drops.
A hydrating.
Yes, it's all about moisturising. So activating my tear glands to moisturise my eyes. But I'm happy with my eyes. Where I see my lines, I'm like, well, actually, do you know what? That just means I've laughed quite deep.
Yeah.
And that to me is as important.
Such a lovely way of looking at it.
And I honestly, I have clients that have all manner of things done.
Yeah.
I love to see it, and I love that if I can see that it's made somebody happy. But so interestingly, it took me so long to be proud of myself that now changing myself is counterintuitive to how I feel about myself.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and I don't know if I would feel happy looking into a mirror and not seeing me.
Yeah, and seeing a sort of change.
Yeah, seeing somebody who isn't.
So interesting, it comes up quite a lot in the podcast about, people doing treatments and treatments. And as always, it's like, as you say, if it makes you happy and it's something
absolutely,
then absolutely go for it. But where I struggle a bit more, I suppose, is, the sort of demons in your head saying, well, I need to do this so that I can look a certain way or a certain age, or you feel like those pressures are coming on and you don't, I don't know, that you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Yeah, and I do, for me, this is just such a personal thing. I never liked looking in the mirror. Even doing what we do, I was always shorter, slightly stockier. My hair went grey earlier, which I didn't want to cover.
When did it go grey?
13. I started to get grey through the sides. But I would say by the time I was sort of 30, I had good amounts of grey. But I'd always had it. When people are like, I've just found my first grey, I was 13. Yeah. And it was really strange. The hair on my legs started to go grey quicker than the rest. And I was always like, oh, for fuck's sake. But I was like...
If you're looking, and we'll get into the man in the mirror, I suppose, now. But, I imagine it's a sort of perils of the job that you're sort of staring into a mirror some of the day.
For a long time, I actually wouldn't look in the mirror.
Really?
And I had amazing...
So it's possible to avoid it then if you're...
Really, really is. Really strangely, you just detract your eyes.
Right.
So you'll look at the client.
Because you weren't happy with...
I didn't like looking in a mirror. I was never comfortable. I always felt a bit overweight. I was always next to really beautiful people, male or female. Again, if somebody's beautiful, they're beautiful. And I would always compare myself. And I know when you look back on it, I'm like, why did I do that? But I think there's an element of society. I think there's an element of when you're bullied.
We all do it.
And I think it's pushed when you're bullied.
Right.
You question everything.
That you're not good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is interesting because I always was like, well, I just settle for myself. I don't think I do as much now, but then that's low self-esteem. So a huge part of my ADHD is I have categorically no value for myself. So that's not just about the way they look.
And how does that manifest itself?
It's awful. So catastrophization. If I've done something, I'll instantly start catastrophizing all of the things that were wrong. And again, I spoke earlier about superpower being within my neurodiversity. It's being diagnosed to understand that actually what I felt isn't wrong. This is all very new in the world. And for a long time, I used clothes as my armor. So I'd wear outfits that... And I'm covered in tattoos. And very interestingly, when I first went for my diagnosis, I had to go private because it was now impossible to get it on the NHS. I really knew that I had to do it quicker. I was beginning to really take a dive with my mind. And I have been in quite dark places. And with that comes just utter self-hate, basically, and that would be every part of what I do. I imposter syndrome, so waiting to be found out, devaluing myself, being devalued. There's just so much. It's a much bigger thing as well, because for me it is lacking pride, and I still do it continuously. I'll do something, so say I do a presentation, I'll come and I'll catastrophize it after. And the big problem there is I then start to mask how I feel. So I stop at the negative, start to mask, and that's what I'm left with.
Right.
So I don't process that positivity.
Yeah.
Or I don't go back to it. The barrier is up so that I can mask, so that I am not then taken down into these dark places.
Right. I mean, it seems like it's such a... it's such a complicated thing to process. And I was wondering, how when you were talking about low self-esteem and not liking yourself, and I was wondering if, it would be too simplistic to say now, I feel a lot better about myself. So there's still days or periods where it's like, I still don't really...
Well, do you know what I'll do is if I put a nice outfit on, I'll be really proud of that.
Yeah. But are you thinking that's about the outfit itself?
Oh, yeah.
Rather than you? Or...
Yeah. I think that's a bigger thing, and the thing that I need to do so much work on still. And I'm at the start of my journey of understanding body dysmorphia. And I knew about this quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
I'd spoken to a really amazing photographer, and we spoke about body dysmorphia, and I would say this was probably 2005. Because I've always had quite a strange relationship with food as well. It doesn't sit in any priority for me. So I love food. I love it when it's in front of me. I can eat food, but I would never think about it.
Right.
I would never prioritize it. I would never put it at front of my priority. But there was also the fact that I always felt fat. And I think that society has a role to play in how we perceive what we see. Then if you are neurodiverse or you struggle with regulating your mind, you're screwed, really, because you are fighting your mind and society.
You're on this sort of
so again, it's
loop of it, aren't you?
And you'll look at what people consider aesthetically pleasing. And if you don't meet that, you'll instantly then just go, I'll do something else. And for me, that was drinking alcohol, which then made me look tired, made me tired.
So exacerbated
the whole thing. Then you have how it makes you feel.
So the self-hatred.
The self-hatred. So it's a self-perpetuating thing of negativity to yourself, whereas actually sometimes, like if somebody compliments me, I'm so British in that sense as well, that they'll go, oh my God, your skin looks amazing. And I'll go, this old skin. This old skin.
We do that.
And, if I love wearing shorts, but then I'll read somewhere that because I'm tattooed, they'll go, they're only wearing shorts because they've got tattoos and they want to show the tattoos.
Trying to show them off.
And I'm like, but so what if you do? But do you know what that would do to me? Make me put trousers on. And again, it's like the whole skin thing. I'm like, do I really want to do something, or am I doing it because I think that's what I should be doing? And will I be happier if I, say, have fillers or Botox or a lift here and there or a peel? Or will I still be really unhappy with myself and have done that and then beat myself up because I thought that would be thing to make me feel better? What? Yeah. And again, it's getting your head around that, and that's where head care comes in. Because honestly, sometimes I'll put on clothes without thinking. I'll have a really nice bath, brush my teeth, put my fragrance on, wash my hair, look after my scalp, put my moisturiser all over my face and I feel absolutely fine.
Yeah. But
so am I overthinking because I'm an overthinker?
Yeah. But you're very cognizant, it seems, of, you know, you're on a journey and you're on a process of, you're open to learning, which has got to be the...
I think it's the pinnacle, thing, really, right? For me.
Yeah.
And again, it's
because there's never going to be a sort of an ultimate self-knowledge where like we've got ourselves figured out.
Absolutely. You know? And again, do you know what? There are icons and idols that I love that have had a lot of work done. And I look at them and I think, as long as you're happy with what you've done, but I do look at some people who are unrecognisable, and I put myself in that position then and think, God, what would I feel like if I didn't recognise myself in front of the mirror? It's a question that I do ask myself.
Yeah.
Because I'm like...
Who am I then?
Who am I then? Because actually what I've then done is gone from not being respectful of my mind to not being respectful of my human self. Not that it's disrespectful. It would be for me to do it.
We'll never know, will we?
No, and it's such an interesting thing.
Interesting question.
Do you know, very interestingly, I was doing a thing in America on TV recently, and I put on a skin, it was a foundation or something. I had to take it all off because I could see the difference where my beard was, and I was like, I can't go on TV and do this.
And that would have affected your confidence?
It would really have affected my confidence, and I took it all off and I put a little bit of the clarins that I said about I can't remember what it was called. Beauty Flash Balm.
Yeah.
And honestly, I just felt myself again. And I was like, that's very interesting. Yeah. But again, is that my mental health or is that how I perceive myself?
Yeah. So Adam was mentioning before that he's been in America and he was on QVC, the shopping channel, talking about the Arkive range, so doing a live segment, which sounds terrifying.
It was terrifying, but exhilarating. I did leave there, and I obviously catastrophised for it, but I was very pleased with the response.
Well, it sounds like it did really well and sold lots of products.
Yeah, I think it did. I think it was very good.
So, Adam, the final part of the podcast, I always like to ask the guests what it is that makes them happy and brings you joy. Maybe outside of the workplace. And you talked about your family and your son and your...
Do you know what it is? It's my people. So that would include my family. Yeah. It would include my friends. It would include people who I can sit and have conversations with. Community. It's laughing within that. But it all comes down to the people. I often think I'm better on my own, but I know I'm better with people. Whether that is sitting on a sofa with Kenny and the dogs and Riley, or it is being in a different city with work and being able to experience things that I've never experienced with people who are like-minded.
Yeah.
I think it's that. I think it's my people.
Yeah.
There's an element of course, like-minded people are really important in any sense. But do you know, I know we chatted about this, I love a good debate where you all end feeling like you have had a really good discussion and your thought has been provoked.
Yeah.
I love laughing with people, like proper belly laughing, where you can't stop saying the most ridiculous things because you know it's going to make somebody else laugh, which makes you laugh in turn. Everything that I love seems to come down to being with the right people, and I think that my people make me happy.
Yeah, and I also think, it's an energy that you radiate, and I think we met for the first time at the fragrance launch a few weeks ago, and Adam was so, and I should say, lots of people had told me about Adam and that I'd love him and that we should meet, but he was so immediately warm, and we were straight in. There wasn't a lot of kind of dancing around. We were straight into some really quite interesting and deep conversations. And all of what you're saying, I think you're someone that, even not just old familiar friends, you were curious and interested and were happy to have conversations that went off in different directions. And I love that in people too.
I totally agree. And do you know,
riff,
to be really honest, I was really nervous. And
what, that day?
I didn't. So some of my anxiety is social anxiety. So going into a situation which I now remove myself from, I struggle. And it's often just the initial part of it.
Just sort of going into a room.
Seeing people that, so when I lost my mind, my memory's quite shot from the perspective of I struggle to remember names and faces. So if I've met somebody before or not, and I like to be polite and what have you. What was amazing of walking into there were a couple of familiar faces, but actually once I've warmed up, I very quickly turned back into Adam as a human being, where I will converse and I'm really interested, and I put my boundaries in place. I had said to a couple of people, as soon as this is done, I do have to get off. I felt really comfortable then because I'd said, drop me a line, message me on social, whatever it was. Yeah. But I knew that I actually had to get back here to do clients. But actually putting my boundaries in place, which I am the worst person for, I've learned that...
So that's a helpful thing to do.
And again, I came to that, but I knew Alice was going to be there. There were a couple of people that I knew. Susie, who I just was like, actually, I'm going to feel quite comfortable here. And everybody was friendly. And actually then, like you said, I riff with that friendliness. And that for me is the community and it's my people.
I think we're very fortunate, aren't we? And I know slightly fewer people in hair care and things like that. But yeah, going to the odd skincare event or certainly fragrance events, I think it's generally a very welcoming community. True. And I've really, only quite new to it in the last few years, but just made some real strong, firm friends, and I really look
community
forward to
people. Yeah. And you know, isn't it an interesting one? Because it is so important to what we do. But I suppose it goes back to everything we've spoken about. You know, my big thing is to create these communities. I call them head care communities, but it is like, actually, it's everybody working together. And I truly believe small things make a bigger difference. We all go in for the big things, and actually, do they make any difference? Yeah. But it's those tiny little small things. And as you said there, for me, it's those small elements of feeling confident to go, actually, I'm going to go to that. And when I'm there, I am going to enjoy it. Because actually my mind will tell me I'm not going to enjoy it. And then I'm going to, it's rare that I go out in the evening. Right. I tend to do things in the morning. And it's interesting that as I'm talking about Arkive and I'm going out to talk about it, one of the decisions that I made was, I'll do all of my networking and chatting in the mornings so that when I finish a really long day at 6, if I want, I can go back to my hotel, shut down from everything. I can re-regulate myself. I can have a bath, light a candle, put on something that I want to watch, read my book, get my routine. That boundary's been one of the best things I've ever done.
And that's knowing yourself and knowing what's good for you.
Totally, and people then respect the fact that I say it. And I will say to people, do you know what, unfortunately, I just can't do evenings. If I'm not in bed by 9 o'clock, I am buggered.
It wouldn't do you any good, though, would it?
Not at all. So I'll say, I will do, if you want me to talk about a product, pop it over to me. But if it's the morning, I'm going to be way better. So much more happens in the morning.
So put those boundaries in place, and people will generally respect that.
And again, I think that comes down to a more genuine message. My thing is, I'll talk about things that I absolutely love. I don't tend to like to bring negative into anything. So it's very rare you'll hear me discussing things that I don't like, because there is so much more that I absolutely love.
There's
so
so many joyful
share
things.
This positivity.
Well, I'm really glad you came to that event.
I know.
And we got to meet each other. And
Also, do you know what? I'll never forget our conversation. We don't need to go into what we talked about, but it was, again, enlightening. And my belief is that happened because we were both in a really positive place. We knew of each other. We had a great conversation that actually really piqued my interest.
Oh, I'm glad.
And then when you messaged, because actually what was interesting was, I had sent an email to say that you were messaging on social to begin with. And then Kenny looks after all my stuff.
That's right.
I only check my socials once a week.
You did say Kenny would do it.
And I think I came back and saw it, and I was like, that's it. I should have had a quick look through, because I said to message me. But again, what it was, everything about our communication was positive. I had to change today, and because of a meeting that came in. But do you know what was so lovely is I would have catastrophized that and it could have ruined my whole day. But I popped a message through to see, and we would have jiggled. Everything was so nice and kind. It was like, yeah, of course. And if not, we'll find something. Again, it's that genuine ability to care.
Oh,
that's what community is about.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you for spending some time with me this afternoon.
I've loved it.
Here in the store. Yeah, I have too. We've had such a freewheeling, interesting conversation, and I hope you've enjoyed listening. I'm going to put some of the notes in the program notes about the Arkive Makes Scents products, so you can find out where they are. They're fabulous, well worth checking out. There's 4 in the range. There will definitely be something that you like. There's something for everyone in that range. And of course, the rest of the Arkive head care, all kinds of products. And I shall pop some information about where you can follow Adam online. But Adam, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for making time today.
I've loved it. Thank you very much.
Huge thanks to Adam, and particular thanks for hosting me at the salon in Covent Garden recently. I hope you took a lot from that conversation. I really appreciated how honest Adam was, and and I don't mean that glibly, but I think he brings up so many important issues around neurodiversity and ADHD, and the fact that he's now sober, and I think what he says will definitely be of benefit to other people, and hopefully to people who are listening to the show. I think sometimes it can feel a bit corny to talk about neurodiversity being a superpower, but honestly, spending time with Adam and seeing the sparkle in his eyes, and hearing him talk with so much passion about both his work in hairdressing, but also fragrance. I mean, it's this beautiful intersection and this sort of perfect middle of a Venn diagram of the things that are really interesting to me on the podcast, which is about obviously grooming and men looking after themselves, and also quite often fragrance. And but his approach to fragrance started really, as you heard in the conversation, it's kind of, he is and was a fragrance fan, and has found a way to incorporate it into the work he does. But I think, there was so much in there, and he's clearly someone who remembers product. He's a real product man. Remembers all those products that he loved from his childhood, and seems to have this memory for different brands and different products. But this idea that he's absolutely where he should be and doing the job that he was born to do. I think, he talks about his own neurodiversity, but he's in the career where he is helping people and, caring for their mental health himself and making people feel great. And he has incredible people skills and empathy. And, I've only met him now. That was the second time I'd met him, but I warmed to him so quickly, and he was so kind. And I really hope I get to see him again, because I really enjoyed his company. And as I said at the beginning, we're a similar age and going through, similar life experiences at the moment. So I hope you took as much from that conversation as I did. Now, if you want to find out more about Adam Reed, his personal Instagram is at Adam Reed Hair. And Adam Reed is spelt A-D-A-M, as you would expect, but Reed is R-E-E-D. So it's A-D-A-M R-E-E-D-H-A-I-R. So at Adam Reed Hair. The Instagram handle for Arkive is Arkive Head Care, and that's A-R-K-I-V-E-H-E-A-D-C-A-R-E, at Arkive Head Care. And you can find out all about the various products that Adam sells, the hair care products, and now the Makes Scents fragrance products. So that's all of that Instagram handle. And the website is arkivebyadamreed.com, and that's ARKIVEBYADAMREED.com, arkivebyadamreed.com, and that's where you can buy the products. If you wanted to book in to see Adam or one of his team, you can also do that. And his salon is in London's Covent Garden, and it's, as I'll put up some pictures on on the socials. But as he mentioned in the conversation, it's definitely a one-off. It doesn't feel like a very stark white hairdressing space. It's full of personality, and it's Adam's personality. It's what's in his head is made manifest with some of the things that he's collected along the way. And I loved it. It felt really unique and really uniquely Adam. If you want to find out more about Man in the Mirror, you can follow me on Instagram at Man in the Mirror Pod. And it's the same on YouTube. And I also have an Instagram handle called You Smell Great, What Is It?, which is a bit more fragrance focused. And it's also the same on TikTok at You Smell Great, What Is It? So go and find me there. And I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you're still here at the end and stuck around for the longer episode, I really appreciate it. Thank you to Adam, and thank you as always for listening. And I'll see you next time on Man in the Mirror. Until then, take care.